If you're anything like myself, at some point in your life you've found yourself sitting at a restaurant wondering how much money they make in a day. I decided to build upon the concepts learned in this course, specifically the idea of the central limit theorem and normal distributions, to try and model for myself just how much money a restaurant makes in a day, and more specifically, just how much money the Coupa Cafe outside of Green Library makes in a day. The more technical side of this report, I'll explore just how I modeled Coupa Cafe's revenue with a normal distribution. First, I had to use observations I made sitting outside of Coupa Cafe, writing down what people ordered in order to estimate a mean and a variance of independent and identically distributed variables during the 30-minute period in which I was observing what people ordered. And the main assumption I made here is that the orders of everyone at Coupa Cafe were independent and identically distributed. Computing the mean and variance of these orders was relatively straightforward, as all I had to do was use the definition of mean and variance. Using the computed mean and variance of these random variables, I was then able to generate Gaussian distributions for the 30-minute interval in which I made these observations, and I was able to create a Gaussian distribution using the central limit theorem. And then using that normal distribution, I was able to create a normal distribution which modeled the day's worth of revenue by multiplying the normal distribution of the 30-minute interval by 23, as 23 is the number of 30-minute periods during Coupa Cafe's working hours, meaning there are 23 30-minute intervals, one after another, during Coupa Cafe's open hours, so I could just add up the normal distributions from the intervals. So using these normal distributions, I was actually able to create some pretty nice visuals to represent the probability distribution for different revenues for Coupa Cafe for both the day interval and the 30-minute interval. And furthermore, using these normal distributions, I was able to create revenue probability tables where each probability maps to some revenue such that that probability represents the cumulative distribution function value of that revenue. So, for example, there is a 0.01 probability of revenue being less than $15,232 for a day at Coupa Cafe. And another interesting conclusion I was able to make from these tables is that there's a 98% probability of Coupa Cafe making between $15,232.20 and $16,875.80 in a single day. First, it's important to acknowledge the limitations in this model, given the assumptions that we make for this math, such as customer orders being IID random variables. This is explored much more in the written report. However, the general overview is that this model is still extremely insightful and interesting. And this model is directly applicable to other customer-facing businesses in which customers can be treated as IID random variables, such as online retail and other businesses of that sort. And its potential business applications are innumerable, such as looking at what levels of revenue might be, expected in terms of an expected probability versus what levels of revenue might be worth further investigation. And lastly, most importantly, is just a real-world application of probability theory, which is fascinating and finally answered a question that I always ponder.